So I will, seeing that we have a quorum, I will call to order this special meeting of the Airport Commission at 11:37 a.m. Commissioners attending remotely, can you please acknowledge yourselves?
Rex Shepler, Burlington.
Robin Gillian, Burlington.
Jeff Schulman, Burlington.
And Tim George, Burlington. So we do have quorum. All right. Item 2 is the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the contents of the agenda as proposed?
So moved.
It's moved by Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
That's second by Robin. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 3 is public forum. Hannah, I don't see anyone on the line and I don't see anyone in the room, so we will close down public forum. We move on to item 4, which is the FY25 airport budget presentation. And I guess take it away, folks in the room.
All right, well, thank you, Tim. Thanks everybody for making this time slot work. One, it works for me personally because I'm going to be on vacation throughout the rest of, on a business trip with Jeff, and then on vacation afterwards until June. So thank you very much for letting us present this to you in this way. We'll also come back on the June meeting just to recap this during the full regular meeting as well. The reason that we needed this special one is, of course, so that city council can also vote on it during the month of June. But wanted to give you a highlight of our presentation and a highlight of the airport. I'm not going to spend too much time on the second slide, but I thought it was really important to show, and Hannah, you can click it right over. Really important to just show kind of who we are, what we do. You all see this every single month. So again, I won't go through it, but we're more than just our terminal, as you know, and we have many cost centers associated with our budget, many different revenue sources, as well as expenses that need to go into our facilities across pretty much this entire picture that you see here with just about every single one of those buildings. Lots of governing bodies that we report to, including yourselves, and quite a bit of work that we have ahead of us into the FY25 budget. A big part of that is our airlines.
Yeah, we have wonderful partners with all 5 of our airlines. In the last 4 or 5 months, we have expanded our capacity significantly. American and United just announced increased passenger capacity and destinations. Next Thursday, we start the breeze through flight that will originate from Jacksonville, land in Raleigh, Durham, and then land in Burlington and head back. That's a twice a week trip. Alex Cohen, who I have not introduced you guys yet to, this is our new marketing assistant. She and I will be taking that inaugural flight on Thursday after Nick and I head to Jumpstart. We have a meeting with 12 different airlines or 10 different airlines next week. So hopefully we'll have more services.
Great, and here's just a quick recap of some of the good things happening within our FY25 budget. We've been presenting to you for some time now that our operations and our passenger recovery compared to the pandemic is growing, not just for our region. In fact, one of the questions, Tim, that you asked at the last meeting was how do we compare, especially on a load factor basis, to other regional airports? I'll have a much broader conversation at our regular commission meeting, but we are high, meaning for the last 6 months, our average per month load factor on all of our on our flights have been over 85%. Regionally, no other airport can say that within New England. And I did not include Boston in that number, but all of these other airports are not higher than 85%. So that forecast of seat capacity, which Jeff will get to in the next couple of slides, is really good for filling each one of those flights. Operations continue to grow. We're still the second busiest commercial service airport in New England by a long shot. You can see the next highest one is Rochester. This is obviously beyond New England, but is Rochester. So we're over 100,000 operations or landings and takeoffs per year. Big capital projects, we have Project Next coming up. Larry's gonna talk about that in just a second. And all of these are just the high level picture of our capital program funded by FAA with the significant portion of these into fiscal year 2025. Most of these will continue beyond FY 2025, of course. A little bit into our seating, Jeff is gonna talk about that, with seats and passengers forecast, and you've seen this slide actually, so you don't have to spend too much time on it.
No, it's fine. Okay, yeah, things are projecting well. You know, we're comparing ourselves to other high traffic or successful years, 2008, 19. Obviously, it was a very it's a good benchmark for us. And we are currently, as we continue through the year, projecting to pretty much get to those numbers again or even exceed it. We talked about the capacity increase, in particular with American Airlines. They're seeing a 26% increase beginning this month, I think. And then United also in Chicago. And per flight, if you're looking at the seats per flight, we are exceeding what we did in 2019 pretty substantially with the 20 seats per flight. So things are trending in the right direction. And again, that load factor is pretty huge, especially as the airlines are bringing in larger aircraft. So it's pretty exciting.
As part of the presentation, we do talk about our sustainability plan, our Project Next, our each one of these for the sake of time, I'm not going to reintroduce some of these things. So actually, Larry, you're not going to talk about it unless there's questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, Larry, I know you really wanted to.
But to, you know, in all fairness, every commission meeting, we're going to keep presenting where we stand on these major capital projects, where we stand on, you know, everything from our snow removal equipment building to our Project Next building to runway rehab work. Today is truly about our fiscal year 2025 operations and maintenance budget. So Marie's going to talk about that and each highlight of the revenue. Part of your package today too also includes a much detailed version of what you're going to see over these next couple of slides, pretty much associated with the monthly reports that Marie presents every single month. Of course, this is FY 2025.
Very good. Thank you, Nick, and hello, everyone. Because this budget reflects that we are anticipating reaching higher levels of our passengers next year. So given the number of seats that are being offered, and we are taking that into account. Our airline generated revenues they're not very much change year over year, and that just has to do with how we're forecasting and where we think the revenues are going to come in. But where we're seeing the biggest growth on our revenue side of things is we're seeing growth continued in our parking garage and our car rentals. And this year, the numbers that are being budgeted for next year are really where we expect to come in this year. So, you know, we're seeing growth on that. Passengers are going to be strong. That is going to help with concession sales and those sorts of things. The parking garage revenue, as I mentioned, is good. The car rental revenues are also good. We have a bar chart there for what we are, our budget. So you can see year over year where we are ending up with the revenues and how they are trending. We are continuing, and the last thing on the pie chart is showing the stimulus grant revenue. We did not need to draw down all the monies this year to make the budget work for this year because our revenues have been strong, and we're able to continue to carry over some of that stimulus money grant into next year's budget. Do you see that on there? You want to go to the next slide? This is the short version summarized of all of our revenues as we categorize them. There is also an attachment that does show an expanded, much more what you would see typically when we go to the monthly reports that I show you, just because the one thing I'm going to point out on here, which looks a little funny, is the QTA, the revenues. And you may be wondering, why is that going down $100,000? Well, that is, we have a revenue and an offsetting expense for fuel. We purchase fuel for the quick turnaround facility, which our car rental agencies use. In reality, we are not a budgeted 750,000. It's a fairly new, we've only been open about a year and a half. So I budgeted higher this year than I needed to in terms of the revenue. So the 650 is more reasonable where I think we're gonna come in next year for the revenues and the related fuel expense. So that's why it's a net neutral change. But that's why you see that. And the other revenues are as reflected as we talked about. Including the stimulus, sorry.
Yeah, it's Tim, and Robin, Tim, I don't know if you wanna, we're more than happy to answer questions as we go to, I see Robin has her hand up.
Yeah, I just noticed Robin raised her hand, so I think if it's relevant to the slide, I'd like to talk about it at that moment. If it's something that's sort of tangential to the slide, maybe we can save those to the end.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I can save it to the end. We might end up backtracking, but sure, let's go forward.
Okay. Very good. So on the expense side, our salaries and benefits that we have, we're seeing a budgeted increase for our fiscal 2025 budget. This is predominantly due because in this current budget year, we have done a reorganization, we have more positions. It took a while for us to hire all the right people, including Alex, who you met today, and of course, Jeff has been on our team now for a while. We have two positions that are still vacant as part of that, but you're seeing a difference between a full year, all of those budgeted positions coming into 25, and then plus normal COLAs and things like that that are contractual. On the highlights for the repairs and the expense, we continue to plug away. We will continue with the garage project of replacing all the lighting. And so there are some things that are carrying forward. As far as our debt service is pretty similar to last year. We're at 100% now. We're back into making annual and semi-annual interest payments and annual payments. There we go. So we have the chart there that shows how things are going as well, just to give you an overall highlight, but you can see that salary and benefits is the one that is statistically growing the most percentage wise. Okay, next chart. Next, do you want to say something?
No.
All right, here is the detail. The one thing that I will, we have a line in there for energy efficiency. We had started trying to classify things that were different, that were energy, but what we're finding in actuality is we are spending, we are investing our resources as we do any additional purchases, whether it be a capital like an EV vehicle, or whether we're doing changing out fixtures in the building or other things that are making them more energy efficient. We'll use less energy going forward. We're not recording them in this line. We're recording them in a more appropriate expense line item. So we've sort of decided to decommission using this particular expense category because we're spending the money. We're just spending it more in the appropriate line items, expense line items as it relates to the. Yeah, it started at 250 originally.
So you can see throughout the year, you've seen it too, through some of the authorizations going to city council, that energy efficiency line item started at 250,000. We've amended it down to 125 just to purchase these vehicles. And to Marie's point, some of the items that would go into that item aren't necessarily energy efficiency, but the study of energy efficiency. And I really want to make sure we're tracking what we actually do for energy efficiency, which is the reduction of some of our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's why we skipped over a little bit in earlier slides just for the essence of time. But that's why the greenhouse gas emissions inventory that we presented to you in the past, that's the critical function of an energy efficiency. And that's why I asked for this line item to be retired so that we can move it towards big capital projects and expenses and other things, and not confuse the item of energy efficiency with what might not be what that literal terminology is. So that's why that one's going to be reduced and tracked through the actual inventory.
So that's, yep, there we go.
And like we said, there's a significantly more detailed accounting or budget within the posted materials. Each one of these line items, of course, has 1 to 5, 6, 7 more line items attached to it that you can see within the detail. We do separate these out by cost center as well, which generally we don't report on because it's a larger summary. Yeah, this is what we would like to bring forward as our fiscal year 2025 proposed budget of about $28.9 million, both on the revenue and expenses, and you can see that it is an even number on both of those accounts.
And there's one thing I will point out, that our overall, like our operating expenditures are remaining fairly flat from year to year. You know, we are still conscientious of controlling our expenses here and being mindful, you know, being smart, being a little bit frugal as we move forward in controlling all of our expenses. We're always keeping that in the back of our mind, and when we do purchase things, trying to purchase them to use our resources the best way and save money in the long run.
Yep. And just to summarize everything, especially as it relates to the city, again, we've talked about this in the past. This is our enterprise fund budget. Every revenue, every dollar that we make at this airport stays at this airport unless it's services that we're purchasing, whether it's private services or through the city of Burlington. Again, we are an enterprise fund. We make our own funding and we have our own expenses. The last 2 lines of the operating expenditure section, the indirect fees and the airport security line item, those are essentially what we pay for services to the city of Burlington. And you can see that's just over $2 million. That's with our contract with Burlington Police Department, which of course is the airport security line item. And then the indirect fees can be anything from human resources services, city attorney's offices, payroll services, and clerk treasurer services. Yeah, I'm really proud of the work that the team has put into this. This has been another great opportunity for the airport to showcase what we're going to be looking forward with, not just from a passenger and scheduled seat capacity increase, but also from a budget increase. You do see a nominal decrease both in the revenues and expenses, and I think you can expect that over the next couple of years. Especially as Marie was saying, especially as we start eliminating the federal stimulus funding that comes towards us, we're going to get back down to somewhat similar numbers that we had prior to those federal funding opportunities that we received. But yes, this is our FY 2025 budget, and we are happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you. I see Robin is now just an attendee instead of a panelist. I don't know if we have the ability to fix that. But while that's happening, oh, here comes Robin. I want to give her the chance to ask the question that she had before. And then Jeff will come to you after Robin.
Is it possible to put the expense
Hear me?
line back up, that slide back up?
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Thanks. Robin, go ahead and ask your question. I'm sorry if you didn't want that back up. I didn't mean to step in front of you.
Go ahead, Robin, if you want to ask that question that you had earlier. Oh, you're on mute, Robin.
Okay, so one thing is that I've noticed that we're bringing in larger aircraft like 737-800s. They bring in a lot more people, which is a great thing. So it would seem that that equates directly to our revenue, right? Because more people on flights, more people in parking. Does the landing fees that we charge equate to the gross weight of the aircraft, or does it equate to each aircraft? You know what I mean? So if we're bringing in bigger airplanes, do we make more money off of landing fees?
Yeah, if it's a 1-for-1 exchange, if for example, a CRJ 200 is now being serviced by a Boeing 737, we charge per 1,000 pounds of the maximum gross landed weight. So yes, on a 1-for-1 basis, absolutely. What we're seeing though, right now, at least in the beginning part of this year, is we're seeing maybe 1, 2, or 3 of the smaller regional jets being consolidated into a larger jet. And that's why our landing fees are pretty a straight line budget. Actually, Hannah, if you can go to the revenue highlight page.
I have to look at the supplement.
13. There you go. You can, yep, next, the one before that one, yeah. Yep. So you can see the landing fees are pretty straight across the board on that chart. Because it really is a 1-for-1 exchange on the total number of pounds being offered to land.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily really help us that much there. Okay, as a general comment, I'm super impressed with the budget. That's great. I did notice that the biggest line was for salary. I was actually hoping that we would see that. I know that there was, some moving around of sort of restructuring, how you wanted to manage and operate the airport. But that went up the highest, right? It's like 16%, something like that.
That's right. That's right.
But to me, it's still actually a very low number. Is that 16% more likely to kind of be just this year as that restructuring, you kind of put things in the places where you really need them? And do you feel like you really have the people resources that you need? And then would that go down the following year or probably stay the same?
Yeah, great question. So that number on the expenses assumes that every position is filled, inclusive of that total reorganization. I do not see that reorganization changing. I think we're in an amazing place right now with new hires, even in this room. I think that's going to stay the same. What you will see on next year's budget is not only the increase because of the reorganization, but also contractual increases with our union, COLA increases, and of course and benefit changes that are associated with healthcare, et cetera. Next year's budget, we're talking about next year's budget, but the FY 2026 budget, I don't think you're going to see that high of an increase moving forward, but you still will see cost of living increases and union contracted price increases going up.
And who sets the salaries?
So those are based on what we call the Willis scale. It's based on step placement grades that are coordinated through the human resource.
There's an equation.
There is a very
legal equation. Okay.
These are not, we don't have the ability to change that we don't have the ability to change what we get paid. It's all through the city of Burlington, and where people fall when their positions are created is very much dictated from year to year.
The only authority that I have is essentially on a new hire. There is some negotiation with initial step placement of salaries. But from there, like Marie was saying, cost of living is all negotiated and set by the city of Burlington, along with our AFSCME union contract, which is not just the airport, but the entire city.
But wow, that's funky. So they're going to set everything, but then that's going to affect your budget. And then you have to turn around and tell them to accept the budget in hopes that they realize that they just affected the budget.
I think, yes, I'm not sure.
For example, let's say they wanted to give you a 20% raise, Nick. And you said, okay, 20% raise, and Marie goes, okay, so now we got to figure that amount into our budget, right? But this budget ultimately goes to the city of Burlington for approval after we see it, correct?
Yeah, but so once somebody is hired, the step placement is very, very formal and logical. There's no.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't get negotiated each year. It has this is gonna be a 3% or a 5% increase over time.
That's right. And
Okay, I got it.
when we did the reorganization, we were part of the process of grading each one of these positions. So we know
Okay.
exactly what those costs are gonna be.
Okay,
What we don't know, of course, is the union negotiation, right? That's negotiated as a whole within the city of Burlington. Their contract, I think, goes through 2026, so we know what the percentages are in this year, in this contract. Of course, that's gonna be negotiated in the future, but it won't impact FY 2025 budget except for the increase that was already negotiated.
gotcha. Thank you so much. And thanks for your hard work on this.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks. Could you pull the expense
Expense back.
slide up? First of all, thanks, Marie, for walking us through this. Nick, the whole team, everybody, great job with all this. I know a lot goes in. Actually, I was looking for the one that's more of a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask about, so salaries and benefits is one of the things that I'm just curious, just knowing like at UVM, how much healthcare costs are going up. Is that the case with the city, and how does that affect you? Is there a certain, we call it a fringe rate at UVM? I don't know what the city calls it, but is there a certain rate?
Great question. I mean, so we don't have a set fringe rate, probably similar to what you do. But the way that the city, this is where we benefit from cost sharings, right? So there's power and reduction in cost when you have a larger pool of people, like the airport doesn't have to worry about going after healthcare as a smaller entity. We're part of the city's pool. And the way that they bill us for the healthcare specifically is they look at what each and every one of us is selecting for healthcare, whether we opt out of the plan because our spouse has it or whether we're in the plan. And they have a rate that they are able to due to economies of scale, they are able to set these rates. Right now they use Cigna is the healthcare provider and they have a contract with them. So that is how it gets rolled out to us. That is always a bit of a wild card, I think, in this environment, and one that we always have to wait to see what their costs are going to be and how they're going to roll it out to us. But that is just one that we cover it in that way. I don't know if I answered your question, but we don't have a specific fringe benefit rate. We know approximately what it costs for each employee.
And when you dive into the detail of the 10.5% just on that one line item, benefits alone is 18.5%. Now that's more than just healthcare, but that is the largest increase in that particular line item.
Yeah, it would also include like retirement. The city has a defined benefit plan, so that would be all inclusive in there.
Okay. Do you know roughly like how much of that salary and benefit line is salary and how much is benefit?
So the salaries, I do, and there's an attachment that you can look at as well. I don't know if Hannah can bring that up. The expense we did include, so it shows the breakout by salaries. We have a little line for salaries and wage reorganization in case we make any changes. That's only 25,000 peanuts from that. Overtime is 356,000, just to give you an idea. And other compensation is $500,000. And these are contractual things for the union. And then employee benefits is $1.6 million. And that's increased from last year, $1,360,000. So there is a chart that should be as an attachment as there, because I know those sorts of questions we anticipate and want to give you a little bit more detail because it's a lot to talk about in one small sheet.
Okay.
So yeah, out of that $6.5 million, 1.611 is employee benefits.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I don't necessarily need to see that.
There you go. Yeah.
And then the last question was about security and police. Do we pay a contracted rate for city police? Is it overtime? we sometimes pay overtime? What's the anatomy of that 1 point, whatever it was, 1.4?
Yeah, so the 1.474, that is really done through an analysis of the police department. And essentially the answer to the question is yes, we pay for all of that. We paid for the base salary, benefits, overtime, training, other residual costs to run the operation at the airport. It comes out to, I think, about $200,000 per officer. This number right here, 1.474, is a 7-officer system. So we're going to be continuing to work with Burlington Police Department, work with them on some of the challenges of the budget there, as well as the challenges with quantity of officers available. But this one, just like salaries, is assuming that a full 7-member force is going to be stationed at the airport.
So that means 7 officers on site all the time, or is it varied by time of day?
No, very varied. So that's full-time operations, 24/7, 7 officers.
So
Okay.
7 officers, like a full time a week.
Spread out throughout the week.
Spread out throughout the week.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
7 officers are allocated to the airport to make sure that every hour is
Covered.
Covered as needed. Okay. And I'm just wondering, like, given the challenges with staffing in Burlington Police, like, do they all need to be Burlington, certified Burlington police officers? Is there another way to do that? Would that make sense? Would that help the city? I'm sure you think about these things, but it's just something was on my mind as I was looking at
That's a
that
great
number.
question. Over the last year, Dave and I have been working a lot because sometimes the reduction in officers here has happened.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at other neighboring cities and towns to see if they can fill in. There's still constraints within other cities and towns that can't fill in. We've also worked with the BPD union to make sure that we can contract differently with the union, which is a little bit separate than what we're talking about here. We do have to make sure that we're paying fair market value, and more importantly, that we're paying for the services that we actually receive. So throughout the year, including this year and next year, throughout the year, if that number increases or that number decreases, we need to make sure that we're truing up and paying for the services, like I said, that we receive. And there's a complexity to that because there are challenges that are very public within the Burlington Police Department, and we want to make sure we're supporting that both on a number of officers perspective as well as a financial perspective. And again, paying for the services at a fair market value rate that we actually receive.
Yeah.
We could and potentially may look at other offices or departments throughout the next couple of years. However, the qualification to services is they have to be sworn, uniformed, armed police officers that have federal arrest authority. So we need to make sure that is consistent as we move forward, and that's a Department of Homeland Security requirement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Greg, do you have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Greg. Oh, you're on mute, Greg.
Bottom left or hold space bar.
I don't know.
I didn't know that either.
I spend them every day. Very switch on, just make sure you.
Sorry about that. I don't have any questions. I do need to leave, and so I'm ready to vote if possible.
Okay. I guess the only thing I have is I have some suggestions for the slide, which I think we could do outside of the meeting because they're not necessarily, I don't know, or I can try to go through them really quickly. Let me just make sure there's none that really would warrant. Yeah, I don't think I have anything that really warrants public conversation, so I can just mention my suggestions privately, and we can do that. So I will move. Having said that, I'll move to adjourn.
Do they need a vote?
I don't think we have to vote to adopt this presentation. I took this as just a, like a regular monthly presentation.
That's
I don't think
Okay, so we don't have to vote on
we
anything.
don't have to vote on this.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I will move to adjourn.
So moved.
That is moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. And then I guess, how would you like to handle? Should I just keep going here with comments on the slides, or?
Yeah, we can hang out. Tim. Thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.